Hello, and welcome to today's special webinar event where we're going to cover Enterprise Strategy Group's Economic Validation Study on HPE dHCI. Today's webinar is sponsored by Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, there are a few things you should know about this webinar. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. Second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd really like to call your attention to the second link, which goes to HPE's site where you can find the ESG report that today's webinar covers. There's also an HPE dHCI test drive link and an invite for the special HPE Green Lake announcement event on March 22nd. So I encourage you to access those resources now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Third, at the end of this webinar event, we'll be awarding a $300 Amazon gift card to one lucky attendee on the live event. Of course, you must be in attendance during this event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section as well. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters. To help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. At the end of the event, we'll look at all the questions, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. And with that, let's get to today's fantastic conversation. So our first discussion will be between Aviv Kaufman, who's Senior Validation Analyst with ESG, and Chuck Wood, who is Senior Product Marketing Manager with HPE. They'll be discussing Aviv's report on the economic benefits of HPE's dHCI solutions. After that, I'll have a conversation with Luis Nunez, who's Redpagos Chief Technology Officer and an HPE customer, and he'll be talking about his experience with dHCI. And following that, we'll bring Chuck and Aviv back for an opportunity to get your questions answered. So it's going to be a great session. Let's turn things over to Aviv to get us started.
All right, so thanks, Scott. My name is Aviv Kaufman. I'm a principal analyst here at ESG for our validation services, and I was the creator of the models and the author of the economic validation report that we're going to be discussing here today. All right, so if we go to the next slide. So before we get into things, if you're not familiar with ESG, we're an analyst firm like a Gartner or IDC. We have analysts in all of the key segments of technology. We do forward-looking research with technology for end users, and we perform hands-on validation and economic modeling of technologies, right? And all of these capabilities play a critical role in our economic validation reports. Okay, next slide. So why don't we start with some research here, right? We did a survey of 348 qualified mid-market and enterprise administrators that had experience deploying, managing, and maintaining hyperconverged infrastructure. And overall, people had some really great things to say about HCI, right? Some of the biggest drivers behind deploying HCI were, as you might expect, some improved automation and integration, scalability, and improved productivity due to that simplified management. And HCI is really great for edge locations and predictable virtualized workloads where you really know what resources you're going to need. So, next slide. So this slide, we're really talking about, HCI is gaining momentum, right? Today, most organizations run about 10 to 40% of their workloads on HCI. Over the next 2 years, you can see that the majority plan to increase their use of HCI and run more than a third of their workloads on it, right? So it's really getting some momentum. But only 8% of respondents reported that they run more than half of their workloads on HCI. But in the next 2 years, that number is expected to more than triple, right? Next slide. So we know that HCI automation it offers organizations that simplicity and probably more importantly, that cloud-like agility. And as you can see, almost every respondent reported that since deploying HCI, they're now more agile, right? And 70% say they're significantly more agile since deploying HCI. Okay, next slide. And then, so like everything, there has to be a trade-off, right? So it turns out that HCI also has some shortcomings. In addition to that great feedback that we heard, companies also reported some of the challenges that they've encountered with HCI. And some of the top things we heard are things like increased application licensing costs, service and support issues, processing power being consumed by services, network bandwidth being consumed by internode communications, slow upgrades, difficulty with scale, and a lack of overall control and visibility. So these are the trade-offs that you get for that overall simplicity of HCI. Well, HCI is great for predictable workloads. It may not be the best solution for business critical or mixed workloads. When we asked people what they had prevented them from moving these kind of workloads, like databases, analytics, those type of things to HCI, some of the top concerns were around security, flexibility, performance, reliability, scalability, and ease of administration at scale, right? So these are really things that an enterprise grade 3-tier architecture or converged infrastructures do really well. And that's really because of their disaggregated nature. So with an HCI node, you add compute and storage resources with every node, whether you want it or not. And that can really cause some issues, right? So this slide here, we're drilling down on it a little bit more. So 92% of HCI users felt that it was important or as you can see here, even critical that they're able to scale compute and storage resources independently of each other. And they felt that the ability to do that would enhance flexibility, scalability, and resource agility for them. And I think HPE realized this when they created the dHCI. And we have Chuck here, and Chuck, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what dHCI is and what it can deliver.
All right, super. Thank you, Aviv. And great introduction. So what we've seen and we've heard from many customers, these very issues that Aviv just talked about, while they've been enjoying hyperconverged infrastructure, its simplicity, it delivers a simple experience. It's missing many of those capabilities that Aviv just talked about. A prime example is the need and the ability to scale resources cost effectively independently. I may need more compute resources or memory resources versus storage resources. And that lack of flexible scaling has borne out today. Also, customers want more resiliency. Literally, they want infrastructure that's always on, always available, and also performant. And this is where driving that market adoption that Aviv just talked about. They want this simple experience to run more workloads, but customers are asking, how can I get this experience without these compromises or without compromises and trade-offs? And HPE set out to address this. So when we looked at what customers are wanting, what if you could have all these key attributes for your infrastructure? Just a couple samples. These are a couple examples for you to look at, but obviously business critical performance. You want to make sure your apps are fast, your databases, your virtualized workloads, as well your virtual desktop infrastructure for your end users, your mobile workers. More and more people are working from home. But if that experience isn't fast and performant, the solution isn't going to succeed. So business critical app performance is critical. Reliability, availability, resiliency. It's got to be always on and available. And then also this independent ability to scale compute and storage resources is critically important. Now, what if you could get all of this in a cost-effective way? So what we've done, next slide, please, is several years ago, HPE saw this issue and we introduced a new a new solution called HPE Nimble Storage dHCI. And what this did is it introduced a new platform, a disaggregated HCI or disaggregated hyperconverged infrastructure that gives you this super simple experience without compromises and trade-offs. It's a new platform with hyperconverged control for all your virtualized workloads, and it's coupled with the world's best-selling server, HPE ProLiant, which is a workhorse in the industry, along with the flexible capabilities of HPE storage. And it provides enterprises with unique, effortless management, with full stack automation built on these powerful building blocks and it allows you to support business critical applications and mixed workloads at scale with performance, resiliency, and efficiency. And what is shown here, it's AI-driven simplicity that's intelligently simple, coupled with HPE InfoSight, which is our powerful AI-driven engine. It targets day 2 and beyond challenges for you, the VM admin, and your business line of business owners to literally find the hard problems and solve them through automation and AI-driven intelligence. Super simple. It's absolutely resilient, delivering 6 nines of data, measured data availability based on the HPE architecture. This is perfect for your business critical applications. Think databases, data analytics now, your support, SRM, CRM systems, even healthcare applications, wide variety of applications that are business critical. And finally, it's efficiently scalable through independent scaling of compute and storage. Very, very quickly, you can add resources fast, non-disruptively, but do them independently without over provisioning, which saves you cost and expense. So next slide. What HPE did is we commissioned ESG to analyze the economic validation of this solution. And what Aviv is going to unpack for you is the results of this study. It's a comprehensive report that's packed with information, not only the quantitative details that show you dramatic business outcomes and cost savings, but qualitative customer quotes. They interviewed customers and got some incredible quotes. So let me hand it back to Aviv and for him to unpack this powerful report.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Chuck. So if you're not familiar with ESG's validation services, our economic validation combines our knowledge of the markets, technologies, and industries, along with what we learn from customer interviews and interviews with subject matter experts at the company. So we do all this to understand the savings and benefits that can be derived through the use of a product. We've done a ton of these economic validations over the years, and that allows us to really learn and understand how different technologies have helped organizations to save both time and money. So this slide here, we started by talking to subject matter experts at HPE, and we wanted to learn all we could about dHCI. And then once we really understand the product, we go and speak with the HPE customers to validate the challenges that they had faced with HCI, and then learn about what happened once they migrated to dHCI, and how did they benefit since then. So I always say this is really the best part of our job, right? So seeing how things actually make a difference in the real world and learning both the good and the bad. And I'll tell you that, in this project there's really some happy customers out there. So what we like to do is we like to categorize all those benefits that the customers saw into 3 kind of high level buckets for the report. And for dHCI, these were improved resiliency, operational simplicity, and cost-effective performance and scalability. So next slide, please. So business critical workloads, as Chuck said, they're very important to the customers, right? They're often revenue generating workloads or workloads that are powering critical operations, right? And these workloads have to be running. So resiliency is super vital. Customers that we talk to, right, they really like that dHCI was not built on commodity hardware like the other solutions. It's built on enterprise class HPE servers and storage. And those are built with no single point of failure, and they have security and availability built into them. They told us that they used to have to build their HCI solutions with far more nodes than they needed. And they did that because they really wanted to feel safe, right? So they have to Have to add more nodes to get those higher levels of redundancy to protect against failures, and also running in integrated state, right? So we validated some calculations that showed that dHCI can provide up to 35 times higher resiliency than some HCI solutions. And not only do they provide that higher resiliency, but they do it more efficiently. So dHCI also has built-in data protection, snaps, and replication, and offers far more flexibility to integrate with other backup solutions that you might have. And that can be backup solutions from HPE or backup solutions from other vendors. And the customers that we spoke to, they said that they now had a finer backup granularity and faster restores, and both of those are really important once to those business critical workloads. And then around support, the customers that we talked to, they said they now deal with fewer issues, right? And that comes from the predictive analytics. And those predictive analytics help to detect and avoid many issues. They liked how dHCI did not impact their workloads while performing upgrades or adding nodes. And then the HCI solutions that they had, they used to have to rebalance that data, right? So when they did an upgrade, it would take down a node. That data, if they added a node, they'd have to rebalance the data across all the nodes, and that really puts a greater stress on all the other nodes during those operations. But dHCI is built with enough headroom to accommodate these operations with no loss of performance. So next slide, please. So when I think HCI, I think easy scalability, but it's not just about being easy, right? It's not just about throwing more of every resource at a workload, right? You have to scale things efficiently too. So dHCI provides up to 5 times better storage efficiency than some of the HCI solutions. And these services don't require any of the available compute resources to handle things like deduplication or storage operations. Those things can be handled by the Nimble Storage controller. So the CPUs you get, those are CPUs that you get for your workload. And that ability to scale both the compute and storage resources independently eliminates the need to over provision one or the other when you need when you just need more of one of them, right? So this gives customers more flexibility in what you can deploy, and customers could even repurpose hardware that they had already owned in some cases, right? And because dHCI doesn't have to contend with resources the way that the HCI nodes do, or it doesn't have to depend on that cross-node communication over the network, resources are used far more efficiently. And what we saw is this can result in up to 10 times lower latency. And then finally, eliminating over-provisioning of these nodes to meet both the availability and performance needs means that you can simply deploy less hardware, and that reduced footprint lowers things like power, cooling, floor space costs, but it also provides an opportunity to save a lot of money, right? So by reducing per socket licensing costs for software contracts from technologies like VMware and Oracle and Microsoft, you can really save a lot, as we'll show later. Okay, next slide. Okay, so operational efficiency, right? So dHCI definitely helped to simplify things for operations, right? So the automated deployment saved hundreds of steps, and dHCI can be deployed and ready to run workloads in only 15 minutes, right? And customers said that used to take several hours for a vSAN-based HCI deployment. Management was simple for customers. It required no training, and it just they could continue to use the VM-centric management tools that they were already used to. They didn't have to be storage experts or network experts or server experts. VM admins were able to do everything, and it's automatically optimized, right? And that further reduces the management burden. And then the simplicity also extends to growth and scaling of the system, right? In just a few clicks, there's really no disruption to the workload, and you aren't running in a degraded state like you are with HCI, right? Things are automatically rebalanced and rebooted. And then this final one, and this is probably the most important one that I heard, right? I think customers really, really love that support experience that they got with InfoSight. And they were able to use InfoSight's predictive analytics and the automation of the entire support process to avoid issues altogether, right? And not only, so you're avoiding a whole bunch of issues, but you're also speeding the time to identify and remediate the remaining issues, right? And if there ever was a big issue, they were connected directly to level 3 support, and that was really a game changer for a lot of the organizations. All right, so let's dive into what this all adds up to, right? This is ESG's analysis, right? So I would definitely say, make sure that you read the report where we can get into a lot more of the details. But what we try to do here with our modeled scenarios is take what we learn from the customers and blend that, reported savings and details of their environment into an illustrative model scenario. And this is really done to illustrate some of the savings that might be achieved by an organization. So as always, your mileage will vary, and this is only one scenario, but I definitely encourage you, and I hope that this helps you to perform your own analysis and see how much that you can save. So our model was based on a mixed workload consisting of general purpose VMs and business critical databases. And these had various capacities and requirements. You can see it here, you can read it in the report. But there were basically 4 main workloads, and they range from 4 to 6, and those VMs range from 4 to 16 cores, and then 4 to 64 gigabytes of RAM, and from 100 gigabytes to a really big 10 terabytes of storage per virtual machine. Okay, next slide, please. So the first thing we did is we sized out a dHCI configuration that met the needs for those workloads, and you can see the details here. That dHCI configuration required only 4 servers. So you can see there's only 4 1U servers, 2 space-efficient redundant switches that fits into that 1U, and then a single HPE Nimble Electra 6030 storage array. And that array had 24 NVMe SSDs. So on the other side of things, to size the HCI, we used the vSAN Ready Node sizing tool, and that's a publicly available tool you can find, that VMware puts out to size the ready nodes for these configurations. So we sized 3 possible HCI configurations here. The first solution shown on the left here is a highly resilient solution, and that solution can handle 2 node failures. So that's to support things like a failure during an update operation, things like that, and that's what we call N+2. For this configuration, we chose RAID 1 protection and a host failure toleration, or what VMware calls FTT, of 3, and that really ultimately means that it can handle up to 3 drive failures. So that configuration it's a safe and high performance configuration. But as you can see here, it took 9 nodes, which is really over provisioned. It's an inefficient use of raw capacity, and it leaves so many unused compute cores. So that one is resilient, but it's very expensive. And then we did 2 more configurations, what we call a typical and an economical configuration. And these configurations each required 7 nodes. The main difference here, they're both in N+1 and FTT equals 2. But the typical configuration shown in the middle used RAID 1 for better performance, and the economical configuration used RAID 6 for better capacity utilization. So what's very noticeable when you look at this slide, right, is just that over provisioning for vSAN here, right? You need to add nodes for failover and to handle the load in the update scenarios, and you need to add disks for redundancy across the nodes and for RAID protection. And each time you add these things, you're adding a lot more of something else that you don't need, right? So I mean, I like to use an analogy, right? It's like having 5 people in your car and there's only 4 cup holders, right? So you need another cup holder in your car, but instead, let's add a whole nother car and split the passengers between them, right? So now you have 2 engines to maintain, twice the gas, twice the drivers, twice the insurance payments, right? So to be fair, there's benefits to that too, right? Having more stuff is always useful, but it's just not efficient, right? In the end, that dHCI configuration requires 2.3 times fewer physical cores up to 3 times fewer disks, and an amazing 9.6 times less raw capacity. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so having those configurations, we used a ready node bill of materials and publicly available pricing lists from a major vendor to figure out the cost of acquisition and software and support and maintenance. We also used vendor provided online power calculators to figure out the power and cooling costs. And then our administration models are based on customer feedback, and we considered the typical time spent to deploy, manage, and maintain the environment. And what we found was an expected 53% lower cost of administration. So putting this all together, and as you can see here, dHCI reduces the expected total cost of ownership over a 5-year period, with savings ranging from 40% for the when you compare it to the economical config, up to 59% when you look at the higher resiliency config. So that's a savings of 2.5x. Okay, next slide. So if we get into some of the breakdown here, so there's less hardware for that dHCI. So we saw up to a 55% lower cost of acquisition for hardware and software, and up to a 87% lower cost of support and maintenance. And then because there's a much smaller footprint and fewer resources deployed, we saw a 49% lower cost of power, cooling, and floor space. Then there's a 56% lower cost of virtualization licenses, and this really, it requires some choices when you're sizing it, but these are based on the number of cores or sockets. So ultimately, each additional vSAN node adds more licenses, and you get a 56% saving in licenses that can really add up. And then, as we mentioned, we had that 53% lower cost of administration. So each of these savings translate to actual dollar savings, and those dollar savings for this modeled organization totaled millions of dollars over the 5 years. Okay, so why does all this matter? HCI solutions are great for edge deployments and for general purpose predictable workloads, and automation makes things extremely simple and easy to operate, but that definitely comes at a cost, and that cost is over provisioning and inefficient scalability. Now, business critical and mixed workloads require low latency, flexibility at scale, and probably most importantly, resiliency. So we validated that HPE Nimble dHCI provides customers with HCI-like simplicity and the automation, but with an awesome support experience. They also got that flexibility and scalability of a converged architecture built on enterprise-grade components that are secure and resilient. And of course, their business critical workloads benefited from predictable low latency with no disruption during service events. So I'd say overall, I was impressed, and I think it's definitely worth a look to see if dHCI can deliver that HCI-like experience with greater resiliency, cost-effective performance and scalability, and operational savings for your organization. So thank you. I really hope you get a chance to read the report, and we definitely look forward to taking any questions you have at the end. Let me hand it now back to Scott, who has a customer here today that can share their experiences.
All right. Well, that was good stuff from Chuck and Aviv. And now we're going to move on to a customer portion of our webinar. I'm here with Luis Nunez from Redpagos. He's the IT technical lead. Luis, welcome.
Hi, welcome, Scott. Hi, team.
We're delighted to have you here to talk about your experience. So, let's talk a little bit about what infrastructure did you have before?
Well, before HCI, infrastructure was a traditional one. Pool of servers with different kind of brands, different kind of storage, servers, different kind of workloads, latencies. So we are growing in this polymorphic scheme, and with a little vision of crash in the future in terms of capacity or workloads, given the growth of business.
And what were you looking for? What were you looking at for a new solution for HCI?
When we thought in growing in 2020, we weren't thinking of going HCI. We didn't even know the scope. In a process of 1 year, we start talking with different channels, and for us, the challenge is the real key for knowing new solutions or incorporate some different kind of technology. So the challenge in Argentina and Uruguay was so important for us, and it was the key to understanding the power possibilities that we had with HCI and how this helped us to promote organizational growth, and some business continuity plan or some business continuity technology about us. And we also needed to grow in a single stack, what we call attend workloads and latencies we needed. So HCI is so make the real difference for us in the last 1 year to 1 year and a half.
And were there elements of traditional HCI that weren't a fit for your environment?
We were looking to grow in a new technology on a single stack with low latency levels and high workloads, but also they were new solutions and not growing in storage, then in CPU or processors or in memory, that we could grow in a stack way and in a shared way and with scalability. This is the difference about the old scheme and the new scheme in hyperconverged infrastructure.
Now that you have dHCI, what outcomes have you seen?
Because we have different kind of way to grow in the companies. We have with the HCI, we have implemented 2 data centers in a hot site mode. In other words, we have 2 stacks of HCI and a little storage right now in different data centers. We also have tool looks, InfoSight, Lex looks. It's more easy for us for admin the old solutions and give us important information about the environment. But dHCI is the real difference because you can grow up in storage or in workloads in different ways, but over the same stack or over the same solution, hyperconverged infrastructure.
Got it. And what are your future plans?
Future plans. So we're excited about the future because right now in Prosegur Cash in Redpagos, we have a lot of new projects for this year or for the next 3 years. In my vision and our vision in the company, we will increment maybe 100% the workloads, the BDI solutions over the environment, add new companies over this stack. Right now we have the power, the workloads, and latencies around the environment for growing up in the actual stack. But again, the most important for us is still talking with the channels in Argentina and Uruguay, because this is not only our vision about in the company or inside the company. It's about how can match our vision with the technology, working or talking together or very close with the channel in Argentina and Uruguay for working together in the path for the next 3 years. But we need to still improve the data center environment, the hot sites, the workloads, the latencies, the environment for developers, testing, staging, production. We're very excited to the future with the HCI and HPE technology.
Sounds like good results and exciting plans.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your experiences with us. It's really been helpful to hear them.
Thank you too for the invitation.
All right. So Chuck and Aviv, we've got a lot of great questions from the audience already. Are you both ready for some Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Go ahead.
So this first one, probably for Chuck, what are some of the actual apps and workloads that customers are running?
Yeah, great question. And once again, the environments we're talking about are all virtualized. So we're dealing with customers with a wide variety of virtualized workloads. They could be as simple as file servers but when we did a recent survey of several hundred customers at the end of last year, SQL databases was the #1 app. 85% of customer surveys run SQL. And as you heard from Luis, it's latency sensitive. So these are like databases that need sub-millisecond latency. So it's not just SQL, it's SQL with performance, but SQL was #1. Oracle, we have customers running Oracle. Then industry-specific apps, think hospitals running electronic healthcare records. We have a customer running healthcare records along with VDI. Almost a third of our customers run VDI, and it's a mix of Horizon from VMware or Citrix. And we run both, and that's the beauty of dHCI. It can run all these different workloads in a mixed fashion. But we also have video. More among customers are running video applications. We have one large customer deployed where they're capturing for security purposes. They're capturing security, and they run an app called Genentech to capture video encoding. But big data databases, you heard from Luis what they're doing. They're building these custom apps. So we also have test dev, DevOps apps, running on these environments. So essentially anything that could run on VMware or in a virtualized state could be hosted on Nimble Storage dHCI.
Great, super. Another question I think for you, Chuck, is about licensing or purchasing. Is the solution available as a service on a pay-per-use basis, or is it only available as a CapEx acquisition?
Yeah, now as everyone knows, HPE is pivoting to everything as a service. This has been our vision and our charter, and absolutely, Nimble dHCI is available as a service. As well, you can buy it CapEx, traditional CapEx. And customers are looking at both ways. When they make their final decision, they may choose based on their needs which avenue or which way to go. But it is offered absolutely as a service, so you can only get charged for what you use on a consumption basis, and we'll meter that out and monitor it, and we'll only charge you for what you consume in terms of virtual machines and the resources. Or you could size for, as you saw on the slide, it had 2 compute nodes in a single array. That's the minimum size dHCI cluster, think of that. But as you saw in the report, you can host 122 plus VMs on a very compact platform with resiliency built in. So, but it's available both ways.
Okay, super. And while we're on that, let's go to a question from Bradford, who was asking about that configuration. Does the HPE dHCI solution just come in the 2U plus 1 4U devices that are shown on the slides, or are there a range of options there?
Yeah, it's highly flexible, and what customers and our partners love, it's first of all, it's built on these powerful workhorse building blocks. HPE ProLiant servers, both Intel versions and AMD versions, we can, that are 1U or 2U sized. We're deploying all sizes and geometries, and then it as well the Nimble storage, traditional storage array, as well as all NVMe Electra. We just introduced that into last year. So those are the building blocks, and the system is designed to scale. So you could scale the storage dimension as Nimble and the Electra architecture scales, and you can also scale out the compute plane. Today we have customers with 16 node clusters, but we can scale even higher potentially. So, but what you saw in the picture was the minimum config to get structural redundancy. So think two servers for high availability, and then the array has no single point of failure. Even though it's a single array, there's no single point of failure with dual power. So that's the minimum building block for a dHCI cluster. But we have customers, as I said, with 16 nodes of ProLiant connected to a single or clustered Electra array, or in the case of Redpagos, I believe they have 4 nodes and an array in one of their data centers and 4 nodes in another data center. But you don't have to be you don't have to be exactly balanced. You could have smaller geometry configs across your clusters. So that's what customers like about the flexibility, as we said. And then as you grow, if you need more compute, you just add the servers without having to add storage, and you can scale, let's say, a 2-node cluster to 4 or 5 or 6 nodes as you need, as your requirements grow. But I assume that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. That's great. A lot of flexibility there. This next question, I think, is for Aviv. They're wondering if you did the actual interviews of the customers and what the biggest benefits that the customers saw when they had to weigh them.
So did I do the actual interviews? So yeah, it was me. Yeah. I actually do drive the calls with the interviews, and basically what we like to do is we set up a call between that customer and ESG, and we ask that we don't have the presence of the vendor, so that people feel more open to share their thoughts and don't have that pressure on them. As I mentioned earlier, it's definitely the best part of the job because that's where we really learn, the most, even if it doesn't directly make it into the report. We really learn how these things are being used in the open. So, I think, people really liked, that ability to scale things independently for sure. But I think the support experience and probably improved performance, but I think support experience was really the one that stuck out in my mind. They really lit up when they talked about that, and it really does make sense, I would say, because nobody likes calling support. Regardless of what you're calling support for, anything you can do to speed up that time is much easier and makes for less stress for people, for sure.
Yeah, great point. Another question for you, Aviv. They're wondering, do you use the same process for every validation?
So I would say that we try to use the same general process, really as the basis of, how we go about it and the format that we present it in. But I will say that every project is really different. The ways that we can validate things changes from project to project. What information is available, what we're able to quantify, those type of things. And then, what information that we have to work with ourselves. From previous experience, things like that, it always changes. So we like to look at every project kind of individually, and then after the fact, kind of see how we can, best, what we were able to validate, what we learned, and then figure out the best way to kind of present that to the reader in the report.
Okay. Next question. I'll point this one to Chuck. It's from Murtazo, is asking, are there integrations available for DevOps tools that enable auto provisioning based on software rules?
So short answer is yes. This may require that you engage with our HPE GreenLake advisory services. We have an incredible consultancy with HPE GreenLake, and they work with all facets of customers to build literally whatever type of automation you need for your environment. Think of that as the high-end consultancy. Now, if you want just a RESTful API to write to and orchestrate, those are becoming available over time. But once again, our goal here initially when we first launched the product was around make this super simple and have it integrate with the hypervisor. In this case, it's VMware Hyper-V ESXi. I'm sorry, VMware ESXi, and that's where we plug into vCenter. So we make it, if you know vCenter, you're essentially fluent in the dHCI system. But over time, we're going to be exposing more and more of these RESTful APIs so you can orchestrate and automate, integrate with products like ServiceNow if that's what you're interested in. But yeah, we through GreenLake we can do anything, and then over time you'll see more and more availability through this RESTful API interface.
Okay, great. Another question for Chuck. This one comes from Todd, who's wondering, outside of the ability to independently scale compute, storage, etc., what are the other major differentiators from other major HCI vendors?
Well, once again, I'd urge you to read the report because it talks beyond just the independent scaling, but the cost. If you just draw a box around your infrastructure to host your workloads, however many VMs, whether it's 10 or 50 or 100 or 500 or 5,000, that infrastructure costs you money, and yet you could run it. You can run lots of apps on different architectures, but what's the cost? What's the total cost, as is described in this report, to manage it, to maintain it, to get resiliency? And we'll show you that we've shown you that this architecture is highly resilient. We survive triple drive failures, and the system keeps running. We have customers who are running these, and you heard from Redpagos also the performance, where it needs to be sub-millisecond performance. You may not get that out of your traditional HCI. So, and then the support experience. What Aviv talked about, what the customers talked about. This InfoSight, HPE InfoSight, is really unique in how we predict and prevent problems. We'll do VM recommendations, and we'll tell you here's how to fix this problem, and give you the knowledge base article on how to fix it. And that's we go beyond what others typically do with HPE InfoSight, and it's included when you buy a dHCI cluster. It comes with this full support experience from deployment to what we call day 2 and beyond, and that's the power of InfoSight. It makes your day 2 and beyond much easier. And Luis talked about that, how the support experience is the full stack. He doesn't have to worry about compute or storage or all the mix of issues. We really help solve those hard problems through InfoSight.
Okay. Yeah, and that covered another question. Somebody was wondering about whether InfoSight was included. So that's a yes. There's one from Matt who's wondering. They say our staff is most familiar and comfortable with Azure and AWS. How quickly could they be up to speed with dHCI, and would additional training be necessary?
So it sounds like they're a pure cloud environment. So, one thing to do is and we put the link in there, is take a test drive for dHCI. Just try it out, and you'll see. But it is based on VMware ESXi. That's the hypervisor that's included, or that's designed into this dHCI architecture. So it's not Azure. It's not AWS. We're not running an EC2 instance. It's VMware. So if you know VMware, it'll be very easy. No retraining required. But we have customers who have even though they might be an Azure shop, they have moved to dHCI when they see the benefits, especially around the performance, like running your apps in the cloud. Are you going to get the performance that you demand maybe at these remote data centers? Um, and and then also the data control, the ability to control your data with wherever your data is at the edge or in your remote regional data centers. But I'd urge you to look at the test drive and judge for yourself. Everyone's requirements are different. Um, but this is foundationally built with on VMware, so that's the core engine from a hypervisor perspective for dHCI.
Okay, tremendous. This next question, I think is for Aviv. It's what's the public sizing tool you used, and is it something that could download?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it's the VMware vSAN Ready Node sizing tool. And I think you can definitely find it by googling it. But I did put there's a link to it in the report if you have any issues finding it. I think you do have to have a VMware login just as a customer. But yeah, it's a great tool. It a lot of information there, and it's a great thing if you're interested in this to kind of play around with and just kind of see what those resiliency requirements come up as. So yeah.
Okay, all right, great. Um, Chuck, this next one is from Bradford. Is the HPE dHCI product capable of withstanding harsh environments, or are they required, or are there required environmental conditions? And so, is it specifically he's thinking, can this survive outside of his data center, or is it really designed for a data center?
Yeah, good question. So, more and more customers, obviously, the drive to the edge is happening. It's pervasive. There's more and more edge computing happening uh, outside traditional data centers. Even in retail shops or on ships or in these harsher environments. Nimble Storage dHCI and Electra dHCI, it's a server class product, so you have to look at the specs to make sure it'll run in whatever environment you're going to run. And it is principally in core or regional data centers. That's where we've seen majority of the adoption. Customers like Louise, they have two data centers. Actually, one is their on-prem and one is a colo in their country. So we have a lot of that with dHCI, but we're starting to see some. We have a law firm with a core data center and then lots of remote sites, and they're putting a large dHCI cluster and clusters in their core site, and then they have smaller dHCI clusters out at their remote branches. But for you just have to look at the specs to see whether it's right for you. Now, HPE does have other products that are edge optimized. We have another HCI solution called HPE SimpliVity, and we have customers, including Red Bull Racing Honda, that uses SimpliVity trackside at all the Red Bull Formula One track races. Think of that as a mobile data centers, but we're starting to see dHCI expand beyond the core data center too. So it really depends on your requirements, and but look at the product and make sure it fits your needs.
Yeah, a very cool use case there. Next question is from Paul. He says, going by the study's findings, would dHCI savings scale to an SMB, or is it a better fit for, say, a Fortune 1000 company?
Um, so I can talk to it from in terms of the study that we did here. I think that it definitely depends on the size of your deployment. If it's really small, like only a couple nodes, or you don't have those you know storage, really small storage requirements, or you don't have the resiliency demands that really need extra nodes. Maybe not. Maybe that's a better fit for SimpliVity, or but there's definitely a point at which dHCI becomes more economical, and you start getting the benefit of that array. So definitely, I don't know, check with an HPE rep or something. But you know, I think it might be beyond a typical SMB environment. But there may be some out there that that it would definitely apply to.
Yeah, and Chuck, anything you wanted to add on that one?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to like how many workloads do you have? How many virtual machines? And also, is your business running just 50 VMs and that's it? You're not going to have any growth but in the case of, you just heard from Redpagos, that they know their business is growing. So there's this unpredictability in the future. They have developers, they have VDI, they know there's going to be more. So if you're going to know that you're in a dynamic environment, you're growing, that's where really consider dHCI to meet your needs today to run your 50 or 100 VMs, but then it can easily scale as your business grows. So if you're but we have all size of customers, um, from credit unions that are running dHCI. We have like regional hospitals they only have about 50 to 100 VMs, but they need that resiliency. They need that uptime. They need that performance. And they may not have many VMs, but they have some large VMs. And that's another issue to really look at. We have one customer with a 200 terabyte single VM that's 200 terabytes. Um, we have other customers with 10 terabyte databases, single instance databases of 10 terabytes. That can be a challenge for traditional HCI. You need a large node to handle that. And if you might only have 50 or 100 VMs, but if you have a, a mix of big VMs, that's where dHCI can also help you. So it really depends on your needs, but engage with our partners just like Louise did. They're very fluent. They can help you, and then as well as obviously your HPE sales teams. But just hopefully this was educational, just to open up another opportunity to understand some new technology that's out there that can save you money and potentially address your needs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and we are running up on time, so I just do want to remind everybody about the handout section. The report that we've been talking about for this full hour is in there for you to grab. And Aviv is a former magazine editor. I know, occasionally, my best stuff wasn't in the lead; it was buried somewhere in there. Is there anything in that report that that you really think is valuable information, like if somebody downloads it, to be sure to pull open a certain chart or something that really is eye-opening stuff?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the chart. The charts that are in there, the the layout of the configs, but it's kind of designed that you have the bigger truth at the end. If you only got a couple of minutes to read it, that's kind of the high level executive summary. It's a great
Yep.
place to start, but it's really designed to kind of build and kind of explain everything in the way we went through it today. Yeah.
Great, good stuff. And Chuck, if somebody wants to get started, with these solutions, I know we have the test drive link up there. Anything that you recommend?
Yeah, check out the test drive. That'll take you to our website. You can also go to hpe.com/nimble dHCI, and that'll take you to the web page. But we have some good videos up there. But the test drive is a great place to start. And then to piggyback on the report, check out the quotes. There's some really good customer quotes intermingled in the report, and they're really well called out. But there's good quantitative and qualitative information in the. It's roughly a 10-page report, but it's worth a read.
Definitely. All right, super. Well, Chuck and Aviv, thanks so much for coming on today. Great information, great conversation. Really appreciate your time and all of your insights.
Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you.
And before we wrap up, we do have one more piece of business. It's the $300 Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of that gift card is Jeremy Vinek from Nebraska. So congratulations to Jeremy. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I do want to thank Hewlett Packard Enterprise for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for all of your great questions today. That concludes today's event. Have a great rest of your day.